Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.
So good afternoon everybody, Sunday afternoon. Once again it's raining outside. Again from me, completely unscripted. Just a little train of thought that I want to share with you guys. So I've just seen an IFL interview with Anthony Joshua and of course Coogan. 5-6 minutes long, but you can glean a lot sometimes from 5 or 6 minutes from just listening to a man's words, the language that he chooses, the way that he answers certain questions. It's really clear to me that when you listen to Anthony Joshua now, he's either lost in terms of his destination and heavyweight boxing, or he's somebody who's really fallen out of love with the game. That's quite obvious. When you're a multi-million-pound asset like AJ is, I guess sometimes the direction you have to go is forwards only. I found him quite honest about what he was asking and what was being asked about the Tyson Fury fight. So AJ, why didn't the fight happen? And AJ says deadlines were missed. We didn't meet the deadlines. He alluded to the fact that because of the elite level he's at, the dates given by Tyson Fury just wasn't enough to make a fight. That's a massive fight. But AJ knew the dates of the fight when he initially accepted the 60-40 split. The blame's been passed back and forward. It's all become quite boring now. So why am I talking about it? I'm talking about it because it was quite obvious to me there was no passion in AJ's voice. If you look back to when he was on that ascendancy and he was fighting for the big titles and he's on his way up and he was a fresh face of British boxing and everybody loved him, we all saw him in the Olympics and a lot of Britain fell in love with Anthony Joshua. Certainly I always loved the way he conducted himself, you know, in interviews and after fights. You always saw him signing autographs and spending time with the fans. And I think what's happened is, like anybody who gets sucked up and swallowed into the world of professional boxing, albeit AJ's probably made a couple of £100 million from the sport, so he's not quite the victim that some other fighters are. People realise this is just such a tough, lonely sport. If you're Anthony Joshua now, you've got to be asking yourself, who's got my best interests at heart? He talks about his team. He doesn't talk often or much about Eddie Hearn, in spite of Eddie Hearn saying they're great pals, and obviously they've got a lifetime deal together in terms of a promotional outfit. They asked AJ, Coogan asked AJ once again, he says, you know, what's going to go on? Who do you want to fight next? And at one point he said, I have a wish list in my head. And then he was asked again later in the interview and he said, well, we'll kind of see how it goes. No specific opponents just yet. He's really unclear about what he wants to do. I think Eddie's trying to sell him Dillian White, or maybe he's trying to sell that himself. AJ says, yeah, I'll do that fight again. But he didn't seem to have that passion or that conviction in his voice. I found it quite sad, actually. I've always liked AJ. I've always found him, of course, he's an elite heavyweight. He's a brilliant fighter. But technically he has some big deficiencies. I've talked about those deficiencies before. I remember the first fight when he fought Alexander Usyk, and I just thought Usyk would absolutely school him. I had no doubt in my mind that Usyk would win both of those fights, just because of the deficiencies that AJ's got. But the one way to overcome those deficiencies is to fight regular. So here we have somebody who, for whatever reason, maybe he's just too big. Maybe he's, you know, he's been huge stars in sports. You only get to fight every 9 or 10 months. That seems to be the trend. But he's just a fighter who has lost that spark. I understand the interview with Coogan was very, very late, probably early hours of the morning. You know, that show went on quite late, apparently, over there. But he's definitely lost his spark. He's lost his mojo. He's lost his love for boxing. I think he loves the training. I think he loves the science of boxing. You can tell he tries to break things down. He's quite a cerebral character in terms of how he approaches the sport. But in terms of the business side of it, he will have seen this firsthand the last 4, 5, 6 years since he's just become this huge, huge name. Certainly since he beat Vladimir Klitschko in that epic fight. This is a guy who's just thinking, you know what, first of all, I'm really not as good as I thought I was. My fragilities have been shown. They've been shown in a dogfight and they've been shown in a chess match, obviously against Ruiz and Usyk. Now you've got him kind of wanting the big fights, but not really doing what it took to go for that huge Fury moment. I'm not suggesting, by the way, the collapse of that fight was all down to Anthony Joshua. I'm just doing what I always do, and I'm just thinking outside the envelope, thinking outside the box, not really scripting what I'm saying, again, just emptying my thoughts. But he's a guy who's not in love with boxing, really, really clear. He's a guy who doesn't have a meaningful path right now in terms of that goal to not even being undisputed, but that goal to just holding one of the belts out there. If he fights Dillian White, that doesn't take him closer to anything. Does he need some more learning fights? I mean, it's quite preposterous, really, that we talk about AJ in the sense of learning fights. You know, he's been professional now 10 years. Yes, he didn't have a massive amateur career, but, you know, he had more amateur fights than Larry Holmes. So just think about that for one moment. But, you know, we said the L plates have to be off now. We can't keep saying that he's a working pro. You can't have a working pro in the mega fights that he's been in. So we know what AJ can do. We know what he can't do. But the one thing that made him so exciting was that energy and that passion behind everything that he did in the ring. And I think that's gone now. And definitely in the first Usyk performance and after the second Usyk performance, you know, I had that little meltdown. You've got a very huge Adonis of a man who's like a little lost boy in professional boxing. He fully knows now, the likes of Eddie Hearn, they don't have his back. They don't have his best interests at heart. You know, Eddie was talking about after the loss to Usyk the second time around, he was saying, you know, maybe he needs a rest, maybe we have to rebuild him. Maybe we have to take him off these huge stadium shows and just drop him down half a level or so. And then within days of that fight, it was mentioned once again, Deontay Wilder's name. Dillian White's name, huge fights, stadium fights. So he knows now, truly, who's got his back. And I thought what was also interesting for AJ was the fact he was talking about what's important in life. I think Coogan had some personal problems, and AJ kind of hinted that he'd helped him out or he'd given him some word of advice, which is a really good thing to do, a really lovely thing to do. But he was talking about life outside the ring. Go see your parents every day. Spend time with your family. And that's the guy who's got one foot, certainly emotionally, in retirement, and a guy who's fallen out of love with boxing. It's so easy to do. I was a professional coach licensed for about 20 years, but I was training pros for about 22, 23 years. And I worked 5, 6 years in the amateurs. And I fell out of love with boxing. I fell out of love with the business side of it. And this wasn't the high level I was at. This was British title level. I ran my own gym effectively. Didn't own the gym, but I ran my own gym. And I fell out of love, you know, working with the fighters I worked with. I had unbeaten prospects who fell away. They couldn't get fights. They weren't big names. They didn't have huge social media followings. So they just drifted away for whatever reason. I had 4 kids actually who I worked with who were all unbeaten. And all those stopped after 3, 4 fights. This is a tough game. Really, really tough sport. So I can only imagine what it's like being Anthony Joshua and being a commodity. Yes, he's rich beyond his wildest dreams. Yes, he's famous. He can have most things that none of us can dream of. But can he have that one thing that we all have? Those guys who go under the radar. Can Anthony Joshua have himself? Can he basically be that man who can just be himself and have his own identity? And I don't think AJ's got his own identity right now. I genuinely believe he's going to be one of those guys who will find happiness and fulfillment once he's done with boxing. it wouldn't be surprised to see him just disappear from the sport for some time. I know he's 258 Management Company, for example, so maybe I'm not speaking, accurately there, but I always see boxers, and you can see boxers when they lose their passion. It's a dangerous place to be as a ring when you lose your passion. You get a guy like Floyd Mayweather and a Canelo Alvarez. These guys are rich beyond their wildest dreams. But even though they're businessmen, and there was no more astute businessman than Floyd Mayweather Jr., he always had that passion for boxing. Maybe part of that because he never lost that air of invincibility. Mike Tyson become disillusioned with the sport, with what happened with his story. He was certainly no victim, by the way. But it's the easiest sport in the world to fall out of love with. The sport that you do as an amateur for a cheap plastic trophy and a meal ticket, the excitement, that soon goes when you join the professional world of boxing. It's a corrupt sport. We've seen that recently with Conor Benn and everything that's gone on there, trying to drag a man down from his natural weight, effectively fighting a guy with loaded gloves, and everybody was still in favour of that fight, the fighters and his own team included. So we've seen boxing to be the callous, brutal, cold sport that it is. And Anthony Joshua, for some years now, I've lost his halo. And I remember when he had that count, the final count against Andy Ruiz Jr. He got up from one knee and he stood up, and the referee was really looking for a signal from AJ to say, do you want to carry on? AJ didn't look him in the eye, he didn't respond, and he was more than happy for that fight to be called off. And that's how I feel Anthony Joshua will feel now about his career right now. I think retirement, once he's gone through these huge deals, won't come soon enough. And if he does get that dream fight with Tyson Fury, that's a big if. He might need to really think about why he's doing that. Is it because that's what he thinks he wants to do? Is that because there's the public demand for it? Or does he truly want to be in that ring? Because if you're not happy, you're not in love with the sport of boxing, you don't have the passion, the belief in yourself, the dangerous place to be, the most dangerous place in the world, will be in with the heavyweight champion of the world. But good luck to AJ. I've always liked him. Sometimes it might come across as so. This video again might not have a point to it. I sometimes get that feedback from you all, but again, please like, subscribe and share. Much appreciated. It's just my thoughts, 12 and a half, 13 minutes downloaded from an interview I've just seen with AJ. As always, I'm an overthinker. I'll probably read way too much into it. Love to know your thoughts. Again, you take care. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. And I shall see you soon. Thank you.